Okay, so 3.9 today, first section in this next unit. I think this one's a pretty easy one. We're solving nonlinear equations. Mostly we're dealing with squares, cubes, square roots, cubed roots, and fractions. So for this first one, solve each equation by undoing the operations that have been done to the variable. So essentially they're just asking us to solve each equation for the specific variable. So for this first one, we have t squared equals 400. So what do? You take the square root of both sides and you're left with t equals the square root of 400. T equals plus or minus 20. And I think that's probably where the most common mistakes are going to be, is forgetting that plus or minus. You can square 20 to get to 400, or you can square negative 20 to get 400. Negative 20 times negative 20 equals positive 400. Next one, same thing, except first we're going to have to divide by 4 to both sides. So t squared equals 100. Take the square root of both sides and you get t to equal, again, plus or minus 10. Now we have square root of y equals 9. So to undo that operation of the square root, what are we going to do? We're going to square both sides and I'll be left with y equals 81. Same thing for D. I have to get rid of that square root sign before I can do anything else because it's like trapping the 3y, so I need to get rid of it. To do that, I'll square both sides. I'm left with 3y. It's not 9y, so don't get that confused. It's just 3y because your square root and your squared are canceling each other out. It's not doing anything to the 3 or to the y. Equals 81, and then we'll divide by 3 to both sides, and we get 27. Last like little section here, E and F. These ones are dealing with fractions. I think the easiest way to solve fractions is to cross multiply, and to do that, I'm going to change that 8 into 8 over 1 so that I have two fractions, and then I can cross multiply. And I get 8 times x equals 1 times 1. And then I can divide both sides by 8. So I actually kind of combined all the little steps there together. Sorry about that if it got confusing. And then I'm left with x equals 1/8. And then the last one, again, I'm going to change that 8 into an 8 over 1 so that I can cross multiply. And I'll have 2x times 8 equals 1 times 1, and we'll get 16x equals 1. We'll divide both sides by 16, and so x equals 1/16. And then moving on from there, we have quadratic equations because we're dealing with solving all things nonlinear. Quadratics do fall into that, so if you want to go through and read these, you can. We'll be doing quadratics, Pythagorean triples. We'll be doing all of that coming up later. We'll be going more in depth, but today we're just looking at solving some pretty just basic ones, nothing in depth, no factoring or anything like that. So this square root equation, what are we going to do? We're going to square each side to get rid of the square roots. And when we do that, square root sign goes away and I'm left with x plus 8, and then 64 squared is 4,096, and then we'll subtract 8 to both sides. X equals 4,088. Part B, solving this quadratic, I'm first going to subtract both sides by 8, and I have x squared equals 121. I'll take the square root of both sides just like I did in the first part. I'm just not going to show that work to save some steps. X equals, remember, plus or minus 11. That's where the most common mistakes are going to happen, is that plus or minus, so be careful. And then solving this cubic equation, it's cubed because it's x cubed. I'm trying to solve for x, so I'm first going to multiply, or cross multiply here. So I have x cubed minus 1 times 1, but I didn't write the times 1, and then 2 times 62 gives me 142. I will add 1 to both sides, and then I'm not taking the square root, I'm taking the cubed root to each side, and so x will equal 5, not plus or minus 5. That won't give me what I want. If I had negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5, it would give me negative 125, so it's not plus or minus, it's just strictly positive 5 for that one. And then some more notes, rational equations. You can read through that. I'm not going to go in depth with it. And we're going to number 3, and that's where we'll stop for today. So solve the rational equation. Again, I'm going to cross multiply. I think that's the easiest way for me. If there's a different way that you want to do it, go for it. But we'll cross multiply. And we get 64 times 1, but I'm going to leave it at that, equals x plus 8 times 1, but I don't need to write that. And then we'll subtract 8 to both sides. X equals 56. And that's where we'll stop for today's notes. Go ahead and do the homework.